Welcome to first grade Unpacking Topic 5. This work will prepare you to have rich discussions in your PLC when it's time to plan for Topic 5. Let's get organized. We want to have Math Rocks open and click on the Quarter 2 tab and Topic 5 button. In separate windows on your device, you will want to have the curriculum guide, unpacking document, and the assessments open. Pause the video while you get set. As always, let's unpack the standards first. The standards that we have talked about in previous topics will come up in this topic. They are OA1, OA6, and OA9. You will want to dive into OA2, OA3, OA7, and OA8. You can use the Achieve the Core Coherence Map. Take some time to explore these now. Don't forget the most useful resource, the unpacking document. Pause here to review those same standards. Come back and we'll talk about some key points. Did you notice in OA2, we are asking students to combine 3 addends within 20. Be sure to allow students to use manipulatives and tools to explore putting those numbers together. Students have already had some exposure to OA3. Notice students are not required to know the property names. Instead, Notice that students are not required to know the properties by name. Instead, they need to be able to explain the idea of them. In OA7, students need to understand that the equal sign means balance and not necessarily the answer comes next. This is such an important foundational idea and foundational work for future grade levels. If students can understand the idea of equal quantities on either side of the equation, the symbols have more meaning. Students will need a lot of practice with this idea, talking about true and not true, or true and false. Number balances are great tools. If you don't have a physical one, you can use a virtual number balance too. OA8 goes hand in hand with OA1 and OA6. Students interpret context and apply strategies to add and subtract. They are also expected to identify the unknown with symbols, boxes, or pictures, which in later grades turns into variables. You are probably starting to see how standards progress and work together to build on students' understanding. This would be a great time to take a look at the rubrics for those standards so that you have an idea of the descriptions of the ratings. These rubrics can help you think about instructional moves you can make to move students towards mastery. Don't forget to click on those in Math Rocks. Step 2, it's time to do some math. Remember, there are 2 places to find the assessments in Topic 5. You can find it under the yellow button or expand the Quarter 2 checkpoint materials bar. Topic 5 has 2 assessments. We will give Part 1 after the lesson Exploring Equality. Part 2 will be offered after the lesson Add 'em Up. Pause the video and take the assessments as a student. Jot down any notes as you solve and challenge yourself to think of several strategies students might use. Here's last year's data from the topic assessments. Take a few minutes to make some observations. As you can see, the questions from Part 1 are the same for this year. You are looking at the average scores by task. Again, Part 2 will be the same tasks from last year. Some feedback we heard from teachers were, students usually do well with adding 3 addends. The formatting for Task 2 was tough for students to solve because they forgot to do both parts. So teachers want to be sure the students are answering both parts this year. Teachers suggested students having more practice with balancing equations with manipulatives, We also decided to add an additional lesson to this topic for 21-22. You will also see an additional lesson on the associative property this year as well. Now it's time to dig into the content. Pause the video here to read over what students need to know and do. It's time to get into the topic and lesson notes. Read over those and keep notes on what would be good conversations to have with your colleagues in your PLCs about the lessons. Pause the video here while you read. Here are some notes from the notes. Equations need to have balance, having equal quantities on both sides of the equal sign. Students will need to determine if an equation is true or not true and justify it. When students justify their thinking, this can be done with pictures, verbally, or manipulatives. According to the Unpacking Standard NC1-087, the same operation on both sides of the equal sign is used to determine whether equations are true. While it is not explicitly stated, mixing operations in the equations would extend the thinking for students. Be mindful that some practice in the workbook should be skipped. Exploring equality is an added lesson this year that will give students another day to explore the equal sign. Lesson 5-6 includes a compare problem type incorporating creating true equations. Add 'em up is an added lesson this year to focus on the associative property from NC1-083. If you are not sure how to teach a lesson or what student work you could use to spark some conversation in your class, don't forget we have videos linked to each lesson from last year to support you. As we move into step 4, just a quick reminder of support versus modification. How are we going to advance student learning? Read over the identified big ideas in step 4. How can you support the core? How can you extend the learning? Remember to jot down anything you would add so that you can include that in your discussion at the end. Be sure to listen to students so that you can build on what they understand and where you can clear up any misconceptions as they are working. The final step has to do with fluency. Have you found a good time of the day to incorporate 10 minutes of practice with fluency? Remember that flashcards or electronic fact drills is not encouraged. It promotes a lot of anxiety for our students. Students need to build understanding of numbers. And once some of these activities are introduced, they can be put into math workshop time. Also, don't forget to collect at least 3 pieces of data on students to determine an overall rating for the OA9 checklist by the end of quarter 2. We have just done a lot of deep thinking about standards, tasks, and lessons that align to this topic. We are incorporating context with numbers. We are asking students to justify equations. Let's teach these students to be problem solvers and give them plenty of opportunities to work solving various equations and justifying their works with manipulatives, tools, or drawings. For your evidence, you will be thinking about how to support the acceleration of the big ideas in topic 5. Click next to move on to that discussion.